So with that, it's my privilege. I'm going to ask Rabbi Mellul, the rabbi at the Bet Medrash here. You can see it says Bet Medrash, and we're in the beautiful Bet Medrash. Every day here there's young men, older men, people coming to learn. And we encourage you to reach out to Rabbi Mellul to schedule time to come learn here once a week for half an hour or so. And without further ado, Rabbi Mellul, please come forward.
Welcome everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Levi. As I understand, this gathering is something that's happening year to year. Many people told me they spoke throughout the last few years. It's very special. The Rebbe actually expressed himself that I have initiated, or angeführt. So the Rebbe actually participated. So it's a very big privilege to be here and to speak and to share something as a continuation of Shavuos. So on the holiday of Shavuot, we all wish each other, the traditional Hasidic wish is that it should be Kabbalat Torah b'simcha u'b'pnimiyut, which means accepting Torah with joy and deep internalization. So since we just received the Torah in a new way, we'll try to unravel it together and try to see what we've got. So, number one, we know that we've got 630 mitzvot. Where do we know this? Because the Talmud says it, in the opinion of Rabbi Simloi, that 613 mitzvot were given. Now, in those 613, there is 248 positive mitzvot, which means those that require action. We should be doing something. Let's say to shake the lulav, to put on tefillin. And there's 365, which we call negative mitzvot, which means don't do. So, if you think about it for a moment, it's quite overwhelming. We just received the Torah, and 365 of those commandments are things we shouldn't be doing. Should be the other way around, right? Only 248 positive mitzvot, but like 248 yes, but 365 no's. So how do you explain this? But the more you think about it, you realize that there's the greatest gift here. The greatest gift that is hidden in these words. Because, as we know, every mitzvah, the word mitzvah means connection. So, connecting to God whenever we do something is obvious. But here comes the thing. Like, connection could also be through not doing something. So, whenever there are 365 things that we don't do, and it's a lot of things that we wouldn't do anyway. Nobody here would steal, right? Nobody here would. So, even if somebody, let's say, is careful. Let's take a scenario, a person that's not observant, but he has a few things. For example, kosher, he's careful about kosher. So that itself, since he's careful about those negative mitzvot, which means those that tell us to keep the standards of kosher, he is doing every single second a mitzvah, right? So it could be a person that never did anything, that never practiced anything, but those 365 negative mitzvot are actually stronger. They make that every single second the person is engaged and he is connected. He is connected in his way by doing God's command. This is actually something that it's not something that we have only from Chassidut, but we also have this from other. Just to mention an example, the Ben Ish Chai, a famous Sephardic authority, says the following words, that every single moment that a person doesn't sin, he's doing a mitzvah, right? So to that, we're gaining some depth here in this division of positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah. Whenever you do a mitzvah, you've done it, it's done. The Talmud says, when you take a lulav, you shake it for a second, you're done. We're extending it, we have long prayers with it, but shaking once, you've shaken it, you're done. Mitzvot usually, positive mitzvot, have a certain definition, a certain amount of what's required. Matzah has to be eaten with a certain amount, and then it's done. Negative mitzvah is endless. Whenever a person is engaged throughout the day, whenever a person is not doing something he's not supposed to, he is connected. So, actually, this reminds the story that we've seen here published. I saw it in the Mosaic a few weeks ago, that a person was asking how come that there's so many negative mitzvot, and does God really care if I should cut my salad on Shabbat in a particular way or the other way? And the answer that was given was, this is the biggest gift. You are connected as it is, and this is actually something that we see in Shavuot, that we consider the union between God and the Jewish people as a wedding. So this is a very important point as we speak about negative versus positive mitzvot. Now, if we go a little bit more into it, we'll realize that if you look carefully in these positive and negative mitzvot, we'll see something interesting. In other words, if we keep the definition of positive mitzvot means you should be doing something. You have to be proactive. Action required. Negative mitzvot means don't do. Is that always the case? So, the answer is no. We see many positive mitzvot that the Torah says it in a way that you don't have to do anything. And we see many negative mitzvot where the way it's formulated in the Torah require action. Just to mention an example. How would you define Shabbat? Is Shabbat a positive mitzvah or Shabbat is a negative mitzvah? What would you say?
Both.
But initially.
Depends what mood your kids are in.
Very good. So if we think about the Kiddush, obviously, the Kiddush is positive. It's one of the 10 commandments. Remember the day of Shabbat. Very good. But what's Shabbat? Shabbat is not to work, not to be engaged into what the Torah calls work, the 39 prohibited work. That's negative. Don't do. However, the Torah also calls it rest. Tishbetu. You should be resting. So this is an example of something that's negative that's transformed into something positive. You have many things the other way around also, which makes us think, for example, also the Shemitah. We know that there's a cycle of 7 years, and every 7th year, a person needs to abandon their fields in Israel, which is called the laws of Shemitah. He's not able to plow, he's not able to plant. How does the Torah say it? So in one of the verses it says, Tishmetena, you should abandon, positive. But this positive mitzvah doesn't require any action, just don't do. Let it. So why is it that certain positive mitzvot, so we see that this definition that positive mitzvot require action and negative mitzvot don't require any action, it might apply to the majority, but not to all cases. So, what's the real definition between something? Why is it that certain things are formulated in a positive way, in a positive form, in a mitzvah taseh, and others are not? So, sometime? Yeah, 10:15. Huh? So, a few answers to the question. First answer would be that by the Torah formulating something in a positive note, in a mitzvah taseh, in a positive mitzvah, that is the way of Torah telling you that it has its rules. There's the category of a negative mitzvah and the categories of a positive mitzvah are different. Many examples, but to mention a few of them. Whenever the Torah mentions something in a negative way, like don't do work on Shabbat, there is no difference between men and women. This applies to everyone equally. But as soon that the Torah says positives, So it's a code. It's as if the Torah tells you that if this is a mitzvah that is time-bound, that is connected to a specific time, there might be an exemption for women. So it's important to know that the fact that the Torah uses positive or negative is actually very important, because this is how the Torah is able to give us other details also. This is one example. There's also another example given. A positive, what do you do if there's a conflict between a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah? So the classic case of this in the Talmud, in the case of circumcision. So we know that a person, there's a mitzvah to have a brit, the circumcision, the 8th day. What about the case the Talmud mentioned with many details, if this child has leprosy? Leprosy in the Milah, and there is a negative mitzvah in the Torah that tells us don't remove leprosy. Leprosy has to be dealt with the laws that are described in the Torah. It cannot be cut. So over here, you have two conflicting things. On one hand, you have to do the mitzvah of Milah, but on the other hand, you can't destroy the lesion, the leprosy. What do you do? So this is where other rules come into the picture. The aseh dochel ta'aseh, a positive mitzvah will always be stronger than a lo ta'aseh. Positive mitzvah, over here we will have to do the circumcision regardless of leprosy. So we see over here the way the Torah is formulated. The way it's formulated is a way of saying that which one will be stronger than the other. There's many other differences, but I think the one that answers this the most, it's the way it's explained in Chassidut, that what are we supposed to accomplish? We have a different goal to accomplish through a positive mitzvah than the one of a negative mitzvah. The one that we accomplishing through a positive mitzvah is a revelation of God, a connection. God comes down to this world through the action we're doing. And since this action is somehow a recipient to the godly energy, to the godly revelation in the world, so it's somehow it's adapted to the person that's doing it. And therefore, a person needs to do something. When it comes to a negative mitzvah, this is a much higher level of God that's being revealed in the world, which doing won't help, right? Because it's such a high revelation that there is no way of connecting the dots between the person's action to this level of revelation of God that's in the world. So this explains it, because the Torah is our man. Torah tells us which mitzvot are what, right? The positive mitzvot are meant to have a certain accomplishment in the world, and the negative mitzvot are meant to bring to the world something even higher, which is a life changer. If we realize that all these mitzvot, all the don't in the Torah, have a much higher source, have a much higher purpose, have a much higher revelation to the world than the positive mitzvot, which is completely against our perception on a superficial level. Yeah. So we'll conclude. There's more to discuss. Within positive mitzvot itself, there's different categories. There's something that we call mitzvah kiyumit and mitzvah chiyuvit, obligational mitzvot versus optional mitzvot. And to that, we would need much more in time. Giving of the Torah, only God had the talent of condensing 613 commandments within 10 commandments. But for that, you would have to come here, and B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to continue learning in this room. Thank you.
Eshakayach Rav Mellul. Indeed, part of the intention of the Kinus Torah is to whet your appetites that you want to come back and learn some more. So there's a lot more to learn. And hopefully Rabbi Mellul will be getting some phone calls saying, I need to know more about the difference between lo taseh and aseh, so let's set up a schedule and a time. It's also interesting to think about the fact that in any relationship, when someone asks you to do something, or you give a gift, that's one way of expressing your love or commitment. Another is when the person with whom you're in a relationship with tells you, I don't like when you do that, don't do that. Sometimes it's much harder to withhold from that than it is to give the gift. So it demonstrates a deeper connection, even though you're seemingly not doing anything. So